Joining me now to dig a little deeper, former New York State House Democrat David Carlucci and former U.S. House Republican from Pennsylvania, Charlie Dent. Gentlemen, nice to see you both dark and early, as we say here, on the East Coast. When we look at where things stand, let's start off in Texas. So much attention on this state, and we're going to stay focused on it for another 12 weeks. A lot more money is going to be thrown at it as well as we look ahead to this runoff between John Cornyn and Ken Paxton. Charlie, when you look at this moment, there was a question about not only how this plays out, but what we could ultimately see from President Trump, who did not endorse, of course, heading into what was a three-way bid in this primary. What do you expect of the next 12 weeks?
Well, you're going to see all-out war in Texas for the next 12 weeks. Republicans clearly believe, and I agree, that John Cornyn is a much more electable candidate than Ken Paxton. And, of course, Cornyn received a slight plurality over Paxton last night. So if Paxton were somehow able to prevail in the runoff, I think that, alarm bells would be going off everywhere because they don't want a Paxton Tallarico matchup. That's the one they never wanted. And that would certainly put Texas in play. I think if Cornyn is able to prevail in this runoff, and he would be a much stronger candidate. But right now, Texas shouldn't be in play. But there's a lot of bad things happening right now down there. Democrats are turning out in huge numbers. And so Republicans have every reason to be alarmed about the situation they're facing. They are going to waste a lot of money in this runoff that could be better spent in states like Maine and North Carolina, in Iowa and Ohio, where there are expected to be some competitive races.
Even the money spent so far is a staggering amount, so much more to come. David, when we look at this, as you know all too well, it's more than 30 years, of course, and Democrats have won a statewide race in Texas. How competitive do you think James Tallarico is in this moment?
Well, I think just like Charlie said, this cues up the Democrats for a real opportunity. The Republicans are just lighting their donor cash on fire. We're headed to another 12 weeks of this just all-out brawl in Texas. And now, remember, it's going to be just one-on-one between Paxton and Cornyn. And now that's a real opportunity, I think, for Paxton. Unfortunately for the Republicans, we look back, Cornyn was able to outspend Paxton by almost 20-1. And still, he wasn't able to get that plurality. So with just these one-on-one candidates, the other minor candidates have fallen off in the primary. Another 12 weeks of disunity, of just what their message is they're spending record levels to say, hey, when Donald Trump says jump, Republican candidates say how high. Not what are we going to do to lower prices? What are we going to do to capitulate, to just bow down to Donald Trump? That's a problem for Republicans, not only in Texas, but across the country.
Let's look at, Charlie, as you pointed out, some of the money that's going to be spent in Texas, in your view, could be better spent in places like Maine. You also mentioned North Carolina. So North Carolina, we now know we're going to see former Governor Roy Cooper in a matchup with former RNC Chairman Michael Whatley. When we look at this, you have two pretty formidable candidates. How would that be better spent? How do Republicans approach this in North Carolina?
Well, North Carolina this is a state, too, right now where the Democrats have nominated a very formidable candidate in Governor Cooper. And so I think in many ways, Republicans realize they're probably playing catch up down there. They are going to need not just money, but a strong message in order to defeat Cooper. So you have to look at that race in North Carolina, at the very least, as a toss-up, maybe even slightly Democratic in this environment. It shouldn't be that competitive a race, but it absolutely is because of the strength of the Democratic candidate. And this is going to require a lot of resources for Republicans. But to the extent that resources are going to be diverted to Texas in a runoff, certainly it's going to have an impact on North Carolina and Maine. And Republicans have to watch out for Ohio. They have to watch out for Iowa, even Alaska. So I'm not going to say they're going to lose all these seats, but they have to play hard here in states where they ordinarily wouldn't have to be playing so hard because of this political environment. This election is largely going to be a referendum on the president of the United States, Donald Trump, who is very unpopular, even in states like North Carolina and Texas right now. So Republicans are running into a heavy headwind. They know it, and they can't afford to waste resources. There used to be a time when parties were concerned about electability. And in Texas, Republican voters had a clear choice in Cornyn, and they still haven't gotten there. Maybe Trump will get off the dime there and maybe endorse Cornyn. He should if he wants to hold the seat. But that's not what we're dealing with. The Democrats, to their credit, I think they nominated the more electable candidate in Texas. The electability argument seemed to work there. Not saying Crockett wouldn't have been a strong candidate, but it just seemed that Tallarico was stronger. But Republican voters are still, really more concerned about purity over victory in too many cases.
There's certainly still a bit of a purity test, as we see, in a number of Republican races. David, heading into these next few months, as Charlie rightly points out, midterm elections, right? They are a referendum on the president, even when he's not on the ballot. The reality is, in this environment, given just what we've seen in the last 5 days of the war with Iran, so much can change on a dime. Are Democrats doing enough in this moment to continue to focus on the one thing that we know that voters will likely still be very focused on come November, and that is affordability? Do you think that your candidates are doing enough to hone their message effectively?
Well, I think that they are. And I think that the issue is that we see that there's just enthusiasm on the Democratic side. There's a lot of indicators that we can look at to predict the elections in November. We can look at polls, we can look at focus groups, but most importantly are these primaries. And when people go out and vote in these numbers, record numbers out of Texas, large numbers out of North Carolina, that enthusiasm gap between the Democrats and the Republicans is widening. And of course, we got to talk about local issues, about when members of Congress are running, how are they going to impact their districts? And Democrats are able to do that. They're able to focus on these kitchen table issues while Republicans are talking about how they are going to pay allegiance to Donald Trump. Now, that works for the base, the MAGA base, that is very powerful in this country. But that is it. That hits a ceiling that is low, especially when Donald Trump is not on the ballot. And that's what Republicans are laser focused on, to the tune that they're willing to spend records amount of money to just hone in on that message that they will be most loyal to Donald Trump. Don't need an opinion, don't need a record. All they need to do is follow the whims and impulses of Donald Trump. And in this type of environment, that bodes well for Democrats. Yes, we can't fall into the trap of just relying on the Republicans to shoot themselves in the foot. So that's why Democrats need to stay focused on those kitchen table issues, talk about affordability and how the United States will be cautious and make sure that we're not entering into foreign conflicts without a plan to move forward and to really make sure that it's impacting the quality of lives here in the United States. And that's something that Republicans are clearly not doing, and Democrats can step up, grab the microphone and talk directly to people at their kitchen tables. That's what they're doing, and that's why we see this enthusiasm gap growing.
Charlie Dent, David Carlucci, really good to have you both here this morning. Thank you.
Great to be with you.
Thank you.